Welcome to Missing in Ohio, a podcast devoted to telling the stories of Ohio's missing loved ones. I am your host, Kelly Hammonds, and this is Chapter 9, The Disappearance of Beverly Potts. Beverly Rose Potts is a missing child from Cleveland, Ohio. She was last seen on August 24, 1951, walking towards her house after a performance arts show in a local park. Beverly was 10 years old at the time of her disappearance and would be 77 years old today. Beverly is a white female with blonde hair and blue eyes. At the time of her disappearance, she was approximately 4 foot 11 inches tall and 90 pounds. Beverly was wearing a size 14 or 16 girls' blue denim jeans with a side zipper and no label, bright red cotton panties with no tag with elastic around the waist but not around the leg holes, green socks, a white cotton Honey Lane undershirt with a tag, a reddish-pink turtleneck jersey with no label, a navy blue poplin jacket with no label and both pockets torn, size 5 or 5.5 Carrie Brooks sport shoes loafers, which had been resoled and heeled, 2 metal hair clasps with brown plastic covers, and a yellow gold ring. The ring is similar to a wedding ring and has spaces for 7 or 8 small stones, but the stones are all missing. Beverly had her hair cut in a short bob with bangs shortly before her disappearance. She has wide-set eyes and gaps between her teeth, and her upper and lower molars have silver fillings. She has a vaccination scar on her upper left arm and a small scar over her left eyebrow. A kidney-shaped birthmark about 1 inch long and 3/8 of an inch wide on her instep. Beverly has a distinctive duck-like walk with her toes turned out. She was tall for her age at the time of her disappearance and could have easily passed for 12. She may have grown tall in adulthood. If you have any information on the disappearance of Beverly Potts, please contact the Cleveland Police Department at 216-623-5100. Beverly Rose Potts was born at 7:34 p.m. on April 15, 1941, to Robert and Elizabeth Potts. At 2 months premature and only weighing 3 pounds 2 ounces, Beverly spent the first weeks of her life in an incubator. It was in those first weeks that Elizabeth Potts gave her tiny daughter a nickname. Beverly was nicknamed Rosebud due to how small and pink she was. Beverly grew into a beautiful and shy little girl. At 10 years old, she was living with her parents and 22-year-old sister Anita on Lynette Avenue in Cleveland, Ohio. In 1951, the Lynette Avenue neighborhood was a middle-class neighborhood with well-kept houses. The neighborhood has been described as a Leave It to Beaver neighborhood, where it was safe for women to walk down the street after dark and unheard of for children to go missing. Halloran Park was a fairly new local park opened to the public in 1945. Named after William I. Halloran, a local journalist employed by United Press International who went down with the Arizona when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. William Halloran is listed as the first Clevelander to die in World War II. The park was 11.5 acres of fenced-in basketball courts, swings, monkey bars, teeter-totters, slides, and a baseball diamond. It quickly became a popular spot with local children during the summer months when school was out. Even though the park was always busy with the laughter of children during the day, at night it was a different story. The park lacked interior lighting and was deemed unsafe at night. There was a half-dozen benches hidden in the shadows of the shelter that frequently were the scene of nightly parties of making out. And the mornings of the park were spent cleaning up empty wine bottles from the playing fields that were left there from the night before. However, the scene of the park would change on August 24, 1951. The day at the park began by playground crews taking inventory of the equipment and getting the park ready to close for the summer. The swings were all removed and the shelter house was locked. Later in the day, the City Recreation Department and the Cleveland Press were hosting an end-of-summer show wagon. A show wagon was a traveling stage show and a strictly local neighborhood talent show. Beverly was excited to attend the show wagon at Halloran Park. Beverly's father, Robert, was a stagehand at the Allen Theater in Cleveland and this helped create Beverly's love for the performance arts. The previous day, Beverly, who was usually a pretty obedient child, lost track of time while playing with her 6-year-old cousin Amber at Halloran Park. For being late, Elizabeth Potts grounded her daughter and forbid her to go to the park for 2 weeks. However, with the show wagon, Elizabeth Potts gave her daughter permission to go to the children's performance and stay until the end of the show. The following is a timeline of events that has been reported as the events of Beverly's day. Between 6:30 and 6:45 p.m., the Potts family finished their dinner and waited the arrival of their guests, which were the neighbors and close friends. At approximately 7 p.m., Lester Swing and his family, including Beverly's best friend Patsy Swing, went to the Potts home to watch the Cleveland Indians play the New York Yankees. Shortly after the Swings arrived at the Potts home, Beverly Potts and Patricia Swing hopped on their bikes and made their way to Halloran Park. Due to the large crowd at the park when the show started at 8 p.m., it became difficult to maneuver their bikes. It is reported by the Plain Dealer that the attendance of the show was close to 2,000 people. Most of the attendees are presumably Beverly's neighbors, friends, and schoolmates. At approximately 8:10 p.m., the girls dropped their bikes back off at their homes to make it easier to navigate the crowds. When the girls pulled back in their driveway to drop off their bikes, Margaret Swing called for her daughter Patsy to come inside for the evening. Patsy explained to her mother that Beverly was allowed to return and watch the show. Margaret then gave Patsy permission to join Beverly as long as she was home before dark, or approximately 9 p.m. Beverly and Patsy took off on foot and made it back to Halloran Park sometime before 8:30 p.m. Patsy was not interested in the show and suggested to Beverly at 8:45 p.m. that they return home since she needed to be home by 9 p.m. Beverly was entranced with the dancing and singing and insisted on staying. Patsy decided to leave and go home so she would make it for curfew. Beverly stayed to watch the show since she had permission to stay until the end of the performance. At approximately 10 p.m., Beverly's family began getting worried that she had not returned home, so Anita Potts called next door to the Swings' house to see if Beverly was there. Anita quickly got off the phone and told her parents that Patsy had made it home approximately an hour before, but Beverly was not with her. Anita and Robert Potts began walking up and down the street looking for Beverly. At 10:57 p.m., Elizabeth Potts called the Cleveland Police Department and reported Beverly missing. Anita then called the police a second and third time before they showed up at the Potts residence at approximately 12:30 a.m. The first thing the police did was search the house from top to bottom 2 times. They then searched the yard, thinking Beverly was hiding since she came home late. The police then took into consideration that Beverly had ran away. So they checked to see if any of her clothes were missing and checked to see if her piggy bank had been touched. Ultimately, it was determined that nothing was missing. About this time, word began to travel and members of the close-knit community began to show up at the Potts residence. They showed up bringing food and support, while absolute strangers stopped by or phoned to offer comfort and condolences. The neighbors assembled small groups and began searching the neighborhood, looking behind garages, in backyards, and around bushes into the early morning hours. But Beverly was nowhere to be seen. Like with any missing person case, the police began their investigation by looking at the family. Due to Robert's odd hours and lack of people knowing him, his questioning was described as intense and almost invasive. Robert, Elizabeth, and Anita Potts were quickly cleared. By all accounts, the home life of the Potts family was determined to be happy and stable. The police also found no evidence to suggest Beverly would run away either. The Cleveland police realized Beverly Potts was missing. The detective assigned to the case was James E. MacArthur. He quickly jumped into action and notified the FBI that Beverly was missing. However, with laws that were in place, the FBI would not be able to help unless a ransom note or a telephone call from the abductors came in. Back at the Potts home, relatives were trying to take care of Elizabeth Potts. They knew she needed rest, so they called in a doctor. But Elizabeth Potts wasn't having it. She resisted the medication, stating, "I'm waiting. I don't want to sleep." As the police questioned everyone that knew Beverly, it became even more apparent that something was wrong. Every person that knew the 10-year-old explained Beverly as unusually shy, especially around males, and she was extremely cautious of strangers. These facts about her helped police theorize as to what could have happened to Beverly Potts. One idea theorized by the Cleveland police is that Beverly was enticed into a nearby house or by someone she knew. Even though she was young, Beverly was hired frequently as a babysitter for the neighborhood kids. Police even thought this could be a way someone lured her in, as well as someone requesting to run an errand. By the time Saturday morning rolled around, an in-depth search had been organized. Mounted police officers, other uniformed officers, detectives, every available police cruiser, members of 2 different Boy Scout troops, city firemen, Civil Air Patrol, and employees from the City Park and Service Division began the grueling task of searching for Beverly Potts. The search team combed areas such as Halloran Park, local neighborhoods and fields, parks as far away as Big Creek, Edgewater Park, and Rocky River Reservation were searched as well. It was one of the biggest searches in Cleveland history, described by Cleveland News as an army of searchers. Even with an army searching for Beverly Potts, there was nothing found that could give clues as to what happened to the missing 10-year-old. By this time, the media began heavily reporting about Beverly's disappearance. Her disappearance was compared to the Lindbergh kidnapping and competed with the Korean War for the front page. With all the media attention, the Potts' usually quiet neighborhood became a gathering ground for curious onlookers outside of their residence. It became so bad that eventually the Cleveland Police Department barricaded the street. The prank phone calls began too. People would call the Potts residence and either just hang up the phone or laughed into the phone before hanging up. Beverly Potts had now been missing for 24 hours and there was absolutely no sign of her. There were so many questions and not enough answers. The police continued their investigation and spent time updating news sources in the area. The Potts family also made many statements to news sources. The following are quotes from articles I was able to find on Beverly's disappearance. Through her tears, Elizabeth Potts reported to the press on August 25, 1951, that Beverly was too shy to go willingly with anyone. Elizabeth claims Beverly would have squirmed, resisted, and fought terribly if someone tried to grab her. Another family member reported that the only way Beverly would have gotten in a car with anyone was if she knew them. On August 26, 1951, Detective MacArthur reported to the Plain Dealer, "I cannot accept any theory that Beverly ran away. She lived in a happy home and had no desire or reason to go off." On August 27, 1951, Detective MacArthur reported to the Plain Dealer, "I cannot remember any case where there was so little evidence for such a long period of time." On August 29, 1951, Detective MacArthur reported to the press, "I think Beverly Potts was taken away in an automobile by a person or persons she knew well enough to talk to. Every bit of evidence in this case, every report, and every conversation leads to the conclusion that Beverly absolutely would not have gone anywhere with a stranger. There may have been another or others in the car, but the one who first spoke to Beverly was not a stranger. Had he been, she would have run up the street. Absolutely nothing violent or anything out of the ordinary could have taken place at the park, with so many people wandering the area." It is unclear who he stated it to, but Robert Potts claimed, "We warned her constantly about talking with strange men. We never thought to warn her against women." William Potts, Beverly's uncle, wondered aloud if she could have been abducted by a woman, and this being the reason Beverly didn't cry for help. On August 30, 1951, the Plain Dealer declared the police received as many as 1,500 calls a day regarding Beverly's disappearance. The Cleveland police search continued. In the days following Beverly's disappearance, the police identified and interviewed all the performers and technicians involved with the show wagon. On September 14, 1951, the police began what the press termed a basement-to-attic search of the Lynette Avenue homes. Even though this seemed like an invasion of privacy, law enforcement justified this action by saying Beverly could have been lured into a home by someone she knew. Everyone was desperately following Beverly's disappearance, hoping she would be found. Even city officials such as Mayor Thomas A. Burke and Alvin J. Sutton seemed consumed with the case. The Stagehands Union AFL Local 27, where Robert Potts was employed, offered the first reward. They donated $1,500 for any information leading to the arrest and conviction of Beverly's kidnapper. Following suit, a lot of local unions and businesses donated to Beverly's reward as well. By November, the reward had grown to approximately $8,000. In the months leading up to Beverly's disappearance, there were several strange occurrences around the Cleveland area, as well as the area where Beverly went missing. In May, 3 months before her disappearance, 5-year-old Gail Ann Mitchell of Lakewood, Ohio, had been snatched and later abandoned in a downtown department store. Also in May, there were reports that 2 little girls had been molested at Halloran Park. In the weeks before Beverly's disappearance, 3 different women had been the targets of what the news called sex attacks. The attacks happened in areas close to the Potts home. The tips on Beverly's disappearance kept coming in, but none helped to locate her. There were also several people that came forward claiming to have seen Beverly on the night she disappeared. One of the only sightings that held merit was from a young boy named Fred Cross. Fred stated that he had seen Beverly walking in the park shortly after the show wagon. He claimed she was walking diagonally across the park just yards from her Lynette Avenue home. He believed Beverly to be walking home. Fred knew where Beverly lived because he delivered the press to the Potts home. Beverly even sometimes paid him. Not only did Fred know who Beverly was, but he was able to identify her walking in the park by her duck-like walk. Throughout the years, many names have been listed as possible suspects, but none have actually been linked to Beverly's disappearance. The first name considered as a possible suspect is Harvey Lee Rush. Harvey was a drifter and a Cleveland native that confessed to Beverly's murder to California police. Harvey stated that he lured Beverly to a nearby bridge with candy. The only problem is he stated he murdered Beverly in 1952, a full year after she actually disappeared. Harvey Rush later recanted his confession, stating he only confessed so he would be extradited back to his hometown of Cleveland. The second suspect came from 2 retired Cleveland police detectives that in 1980 revealed information they had received in 1974. In 1974, Detective Furist and Detective Shanklin received a tip from a local attorney whose client thought he knew what happened to Beverly Potts. According to the attorney, his client stated that his brother confessed to abducting Beverly. The police then tracked down the brother and began to question him. The man readily admitted to living close to Halloran Park in 1951. He even admitted that he made a habit of picking up and molesting young girls there. When questioned about Beverly, the man did not remember abducting Beverly, but stated he had flashes of a memory involving a girl named Beverly. Detectives Furist and Shanklin were convinced this man was guilty of abducting Beverly Potts, but the county prosecutor's office refused to pursue the case due to lack of evidence. The third person that many consider a suspect is William Henry Redmond. William Redmond was an Ohio native and former carnival worker. In 1988, William was indicted for the 1951 murder of Jane Marie Althoff in Pennsylvania. While in prison, William communicated to his cellmate that he had killed 3 other young girls. Even though William Redmond would not comment one way or the other about Beverly Potts, however, police knew he was in the general area at the time of Beverly's disappearance, and with a history of child molestation dating back to 1935. The one difference investigators found with William's victims compared to Beverly is that Beverly would have been considerably older than his previous victims. On top of the suspicious people in the disappearance of Beverly Potts, there were also some suspicious letters that police hoped would lead them to answers. The first letter was discovered in 1994 under a carpet in a Cleveland home. The letter was written by a woman who claimed to witness her husband disposing of Beverly's body in their furnace. The police were able to track down and question the woman who wrote the letter. The woman stated that the letter was a false allegation she had written as revenge on her abusive husband. Then beginning in 2000, a reporter by the name of Brent Larkin from the Cleveland Plain Dealer received a series of letters from an anonymous man claiming to be elderly and in failing health. Here is part of the first letter. To whom it may concern, now that I am in the twilight of my life, nearing my 82nd year of age, I will tell you what happened to Beverly Potts. I only wanted to fondle her, but she started screaming and yelling. Fearing that someone would hear her, I hit her with my fist and she went limp. She was very friendly and I had no problem getting her in my car that was parked close by. I thought I had only knocked her out, but after fondling her for a few minutes, she was getting pretty cold. The letter was postmarked July 11, 2000, and the stamp used to mail it had been out of circulation for a year. Here is a piece of the second letter. Dear Mr. Larkin, as doctors don't give me very long to live, I have left a letter with my lawyer to be opened in the event of my death. The writer explained there would be a 1916 Liberty Standing Quarter that he insisted Beverly carried with her that night in a coin purse. The writer made several other comments, but gave several details in the letter, some being incorrect. The writer did, however, state that his conscience got the best of him as far back as 1967, and that he wrote a letter to Coroner Sam Gerber asking him to arrange a plea bargain agreement for manslaughter on his behalf with the Cuyahoga County prosecutor at the time, John C. Corrigan, but he chose not to. The writer continued, Now arthritis and cancer and diabetes have taken over my body, and I will be in Riverside Cemetery before another year is out. A third letter came to the Plain Dealer that stated, If I am still living August 24th, the 50th anniversary of Beverly's disappearance, I will turn myself in at Halloran Park at 12 noon. The writer then stated to Larkin, I would like for you to be there with the police department. 50 years is long enough to live with what I have done. A fourth letter was received by Brent Larkin 17 days before the 50th anniversary of the disappearance of Beverly Potts. The letter stated, Sorry I won't be able to keep the appointment on the 24th. I was going to give myself up at the fire station at Halloran Park at 12 noon. I have to go in a nursing home as I can't keep going on by myself. I have already lived longer than doctors gave me to live. The letter was signed, Your Friend. Every letter that came in to Brent Larkin, he turned over to Robert Wolf, the newest detective on Beverly's case. Robert Wolf took the letters very seriously, even with the discrepancies in details. Some things that Detective Wolf noticed is that the handwriting was the same in all four letters. The handwriting appeared to be shaky and seemed to fit an elderly person's handwriting. The writer spelled Lynette right and mentioned the Riverside Cemetery, making the detectives believe the writer knew the area. Detective Wolf was hoping this series of letters would finally solve the disappearance of Beverly Potts. To try to figure out the identity of the mysterious writer, the envelope was tested for DNA. Forensics was able to pull DNA off the flap of the envelope and determine the writer was a man, but ultimately the writer could not be identified. The letter itself was dusted for fingerprints, and again none were found. Authorities then assumed either the writer had been incredibly cautious or the person was as old as they claimed. Sometimes, with super dry skin, an elderly person doesn't transfer their fingerprints. Detective Wolf began checking obituaries for Riverside Cemetery, but again he wasn't able to find anything. Even though Detective Wolf took the letters seriously, there were also several inaccuracies that made him think the letters could be a cruel prank. It was never reported that Beverly had a change purse. The coin mentioned by the writer was extremely rare and valuable, but it reminded the detectives of details from another case. There were also several other similarities that Detective Wolf could see from the mystery letters to a confession that had been made years prior that was deemed to be a hoax. Whether the mystery writer is responsible for Beverly's disappearance or the writer is a cruel prankster, we will never know. But ultimately, Brent Larkin and Robert Wolf believe the letters were just a cruel prank. Then in early August 2015, as the 64th year of Beverly's disappearance neared, a new tip was called in to Crime Stoppers. An unknown person called and left information about a possible suspect. The information provided by the caller was checked by the police and found to be accurate. However, the Cleveland Police Department have no way to contact this caller. They have pled publicly for the caller to call back, but as of 2019, the caller has not been heard from again. Almost 68 years has passed since that late summer night when Beverly Potts went missing. Her mother Elizabeth passed away 5 years after Beverly disappeared. Many say Elizabeth was tormented by Beverly's disappearance and ultimately she died from a broken heart. In 1952, the Swing family left their Lynette Avenue home and moved to Parma, Ohio, a move they had planned before Beverly went missing. Robert Potts passed away all alone in 1970 in the Lynette Avenue home he once shared with his family. Anita Potts returned to Cleveland one last time in 1970 for her father's funeral. Anita had spent almost her entire life looking for answers as to what happened to her little sister. Sadly, Anita passed away in 2006 from cancer, never receiving those answers. Patsy Swing went on to graduate high school, took a job as a telephone operator, married a Navy man, and eventually moved out of Ohio. Everyone's lives went on, but no one forgot the sweet and shy 10-year-old little girl that was ripped away from her family in the city of Cleveland while doing what she loved. To read more information on the disappearance of Beverly Potts, I highly recommend the book Twilight of Innocence by James Badell. Missing in Ohio is an affiliate of Missing Person from Ohio. Missing Person from Ohio is a Facebook page ran by Lori Davis devoted to raising awareness for Ohio's missing loved ones. Here is a missing person update from Lori and how Missing Person from Ohio can help if you have a missing loved one.
Missing Person from Ohio is an outlet for those with missing loved ones where we can publicize their case. I can help ensure that they are listed on the correct organizations. I can talk to the family members about steps that they can take to try to help keep the publicity out there for their missing loved one. And I can also just work with that family to let them understand that someone cares, that we are a group of individuals that really want to help, and we're doing this for the right reasons. We're doing everything that we can to help them bring their missing loved one home. And if we're not able to bring them home, we can at least help support them during the time while they're missing.
If you have a missing loved one and would like us to help you tell their story, email us at missingpersonsinohio@gmail.com. You can also contact us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Missing in Ohio now has a Patreon and PayPal page. With the Patreon page, we offer a number of donation tiers. Tiers start as low as $2 per month, allowing you to help raise awareness for missing persons without breaking the bank. If you would prefer to make a one-time donation, it can be done via our Missing in Ohio PayPal page. All donations will be used for equipment, production of the podcast, to provide families with missing loved ones flyers, investigation costs, and to host missing persons events. Links to the Patreon and PayPal accounts can be found in the show notes. Any contribution will be greatly appreciated. Thanks in advance. You can find Missing in Ohio on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Discuss all the cases you hear on Missing in Ohio on the Missing in Ohio podcast group page on Facebook. You can listen to Missing in Ohio on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, Stitcher, and many of the other podcast sites you enjoy. If you like Missing in Ohio and the awareness we are raising, please give us a review and give us 5 stars. This helps other listeners be able to find our podcast. Thank you for listening to Missing in Ohio, Season 1, Chapter 9, The Disappearance of Beverly Potts. Tune in next time for Missing in Ohio, Season 2.